Good morning, everyone. We're from Group 5, and today we will be presenting about language change. This group consists of Gusti Sundari Okasunu, student number is 62, and Erna Elya Ningrum, student number is 84. In today's presentation, we will be presenting 4 contents. I, Erna, will be presenting content number 1 and number 2, while my friend Sundari will be presenting content number 3 and number 4. Let's start with content number 1, language change, variation and change, post-vocalic r sound and its spread and status. It is very easy to demonstrate to English speakers that language changed over time. At the point where English spelling became relatively fixed by printing, the printers recorded the pronunciation current at the time. For example, in etymological dictionary, nice once meant precise. Another example is reading Shakespeare turns up many words, such as high, which means hurry, stilly, which means softly, and errant, which means thorough, which have disappeared or more treacherously changed their meaning. Even since Jane Austen's time, the meaning of words have changed. In her books, a pleasing prospect refers to a landscape more often than an expectation, and to be sensible means to be aware or perceptive. In reality, it is not so much that language itself changes as the speakers and writers change the way they use the language. Through the speaker innovation. First, spontaneously, often imitating other speaker. Second, their innovative are adopted. And the third, the diffuse through local community. Language varies in 3 major ways, which are interestingly interrelated: over time, in physical space, and socially. A good source of information on changes which are currently in progress is the letters to the editor section of any newspaper or magazine. People often write about language changes they have observed, usually to complain about them. Many of these changes will be ephemeral, but some will persist and become incorporated into the standard dialect. All language changes has its origin in various. Language changes occur as soon as a new form develops and begins to be used alongside the existing form. A sound change occurs when one sound is replaced into another or when it's disappeared. Post-vocalic r sound or rhotic, its spread and status, regarded as rural and uneducated accents in large areas of England. In many parts of England and Wales, Standard English has lost the pronunciation of r sound following words like star and start. It is do not occur also in dialect. It is still in progress to be lost in some areas due to the regularly use. Many American accents are rhotic and under the influence of Southern British norms. However, Eastern New England is generally non-rhotic. A survey in the 1960s found that rhoticism was increasing in New York, where it was regarded as prestigious. So, this shows that the change of r sound is one of the complexity of linguistic variation and change, as well as the arbitrariness. Example, star and start, or law and lore. Content number 2, the language change, its spread, the spread of vernacular forms. A pronunciation is considered prestigious will be imitated, spread through a community, the same as vernacular pronunciation. It is possible for changes to proceed from a variety starting points in a variety of directions. On Martha's Vineyard, island for fishermen, fishhood community has been invaded by more immigrant and summer tourists. A 1950s linguistics survey revealed that these attitudes were reflected in the way they pronounce words like light and house. The pronunciation of the vowel became more centralized. Light sounds a bit like light. House sounds a bit like house. Reason for vernacular form expressed solidarity between those who identified with the island and felt loyalty to its rural values and peaceful lifestyle. So, not all linguistic changes involve adopt new forms from outsider, nor they always involve forms which people are conscious of as prestigious forms. The spread of centralized vowels illustrate how a vernacular feature can acquire social significance and spread through a community. Content number 3 will be presented by Sundari.
Well, let us continue with the third material of this presentation, which is how do language changes spread? So typically there are three ways of language changes spread, in which here from group to group, from style to style, and from word to word. First, from group to group. Any particular change typically spreads simultaneously in different directions, though not necessarily at the same rate in all directions. So it means every language has its own rate and its own direction of changes. Social factors such as age, status, gender, and religion affect the rates of change and the direction in which the waves roll most swiftly. So, how the communications run in the community and in the society also being the factors of language change. For example, from the age. It is not common for the old generations to talk informally in their meeting, and it is not common for the younger to talk to talk informal way in some funny situations. Next, linguistic changes infiltrate group from the speech of people on the margins between social or regional group via the middle people who have contracts in more than one group. So you can see here in the pictures of this people group. You may see there are three kinds of peoples. So we call it group of people. The first one is white color group. The second one is gray color group. And the last one is the yellow group of people. So the gray one here called as the middle people. Why then they called as the middle people? Because they are like the bridge for the white group and the yellow group to connect it. So here we can see that the gray one here in these pictures, they are in the middle of the community. So they have spoken the language from the yellow group and the white group. So it means in this community, in the gray community, there is a language change. Next, from one style to another style. So one theory of how change spreads presents the process as a very systematic one. In speech of particular individual, it suggests the change spread from one style to another, formal or informal, while at the same time it spreads from one individual to another within a social group and subsequently from one social group to another. So this is the example. This is the time one or the first time. The blue circle or the blue around here is representing the different age, the different social or different regional groups of community. And then in the time 2, it becomes 2 circle in the community using communications. And then in the time 3, it add one more social groups or regional groups or different age group of communications. And then in the last time process, it become the bigger community of language. So we can see here that the style used in the community is different time to time. For example, the formal and informal situation. We can imagine that the blue color here, the blue small circle in the time 1 here, is the formal situations that is used in a small community. And then when it is spread into the bigger community, we can see that there is some influences from another context of formality using. This is the outside blue. And then the third time, the dark blue added into the community as the reason for these changes. And in the last process, they have the bigger community in which formal and informal language is used due to the context. So it is true that the statement here, the same time it spread from one individual to another individual within a social group and subsequently from one social group to another. So we can conclude that one group influenced another group. Next, from one style to another style also we can see in a table. The time 1, the style that used in the group 1, 2, and 3, they have formal situation, but in the group 2 they only use it in a certain situation, and in the third group they don't have formal use. And in the group 1 they only used casual style in a certain situation, but the group 2 and the group 3 they don't have it. And then time changes, the group 1 influenced the group 2 with the formal used, and then the group 2 also influenced the third group, while the third group only used it formal in certain situations. But for casual, the first group here has been improving to have a casual form of language style, but then the group 2 influenced by the first one here, they have casual style of language in certain situations, but the third still have no casual style. And then the third time, when time changes, all of the group here has the formal style of language, while in the casual, the third group only use it in a certain situation. So from this table, we can conclude that when a changes is a prestigious one, it is usually starts at the top of the speech community in most formal style of the highest status group and spread downwards. And this is the example. The spread of the glottal stop, for example, in the middle at the end of the words tend to begin in people more casual case considered non-standard. It may take a long time to spread and may never gain acceptance by the highest status social groups or informal speech. And this case happened in the Europe country. And then the third conclusion here, from one style to another style, is innovating group social class range in the upper working class or younger people tend to adopt new form more quickly than older people do, and they use them more extensively. The case is here. In London area and East Anglia, the use of glottal stop has spread very fast in recent years, and it is now heard very frequently even in the more formal style of younger people. So from this conclusion, with this table, we can conclude that the need of language style also influence how The language changes done from one style to another style. Next, from word to word lexical diffusion. So sound changes through different words one by one. This is called lexical diffusion. When a sound change begins, all the words with a particular vowel don't change at once in the speech community. A great deal of linguistic variation is stable, but some in addition and indications of linguistic change in progress. The pattern of deletions of regular past tense affix ed are stable in English community. Norwich, for example, the form in versus ik and dropping. The substitution of a glottal stop at increasing. The use of at then and then it's stable in New York, but no evidence it is increasing. What does this statement means? So it means the use of pronunciation and the use of lexical diffusion is different among each country due to their historical values of language and due to their traditional language. So we can see here New York as the big city has increasing the use of it, while the use of it in Europe or in United Kingdom attempt to address the uneducated people. While in New York it is increasing because New York is the city while the working areas has the big power of social life. So it is mentioned before in from group to group and from style to style that how working place influence the language change is very significant. This is happened in New York. And comparing the speech of people from different age groups can be useful clue to language changes. This has been called apparent time of studying change. For example, the differences between younger speaker and the older speaker, as you can see from the language that used by the older speaker is mostly very polite, very formal, and very up to the point. But then the younger people usually speak informal way and then use some slang word, use some lexical variation like minutes, they use means, like refrigerator they use fridge and etc. And then the age grading pattern, so I put an example like beer and bear. Very hard to identify the age of the speaker. So this means like when an old person speak, he or she probably speak like, please bring me a glass of beer. And she or he probably say, oh, that's a big bear. But then the younger people usually speak like, I want a glass of beer. Oh, I'm scared of beer. They can't classify the two different pronunciation and lexical diffusion here when they are speaking. The regular or normal age grading pattern for any form involves a higher incidence of vernacular form among younger people. The normal distributional pattern is very similar to the pattern for a new form which is spreading, greater used by younger people. So we can't identify the age grading pattern by how the younger people use the language. Like what I have mentioned before, they can't classify the language correctly and directly. So when we are trying to identify how they change the style of the language, we can easily find out how and in what cases they change the use of those language from how the older speaker speak or how the style of older speakers use the language. And then this is the fourth material of our presentations is reason for language change. So the first reason for language change is the connection within each speaker. So here in the high class, a linguistic change may enter a speech community through any social group, but different types of change are associated with different group. For example, members of the group with more social status tend to introduce changes into a speech community from neighboring communities which have greater status and prestige in their eyes. So in this social class, in the high social class, they are not accept the language change from the low class communities. So they only borrowing or only accepting the changes of the language from the status that they think has the prestige and has a social status for their community. But then in the lower class speakers are more influential in spreading less conscious linguistic changes. Lower class men in particular often adopt forms from nearby local workers to express solidarity rather than status or prestige. So here means that, like what I have mentioned, in New York City as the working area of the country has spread more language or linguistic changes in their working place area. So how then the high class community and the lower class community can make a language change? Because both of them are connecting one to another by their different language. And in the next part of this material will be presented by Erna. Thank you.